Employee retention is a major concern for organizations today. We want to protect our investment in hiring and onboarding our employees. With people on the spectrum, there are some additional concerns that need to be taken into account, and they have to do with events and behavioral outcomes that can occur in any workplace. After the onboarding process and the probationary period, it's not unusual for people on the autism spectrum to have fewer supports in place, especially if they are doing really well on the job. However, change is still a part of what occurs in any organization. And it is through the changes that people on the spectrum are most vulnerable. And the change could be something like moving office, moving workstation, introducing a new tool. Could be any number of things. What needs to be taken into account is to ensure that the person on the spectrum is helped through that transition. And it's as simple as telling them what the transition is, the timeline, to the best of your knowledge, of the transition, and the training that they will receive, if training is needed. And also providing a go-to person for the person on the spectrum to ask any ongoing questions around that change. It's not unusual for people on the autism spectrum to have performance anxiety. And that's understandable because they are meant to function and expected to function in a neurotypical world. And the rules of functioning in a neurotypical world aren't always apparent to people on the spectrum. So they are not necessarily the best judges of their performance. So it's important as employers that we give them continual informal feedback. Just, nice job. Glad you're part of the team. And when you think about it, why wouldn't we be doing this with all our employees? It just makes a person feel good. But for the person on the spectrum, it gives them that extra comfort level and reduces anxiety around performance. An interesting variation of performance is downtime. So it's not unusual in IT in the development world, for the system to be down and unavailable. While people on the spectrum can actually have a great deal of anxiety when they are not being productive. And during those times, they need to be reassured that, hey, no one is able to do anything right now. The system is down. So, you know, we're all in the same boat. And just hearing those words can be reassuring and decrease the stress level. A regular event that causes anxiety in most employees is the performance review. For people on the spectrum, it's even more so. They consider it a very high stakes event because they do have a tendency to think in black and white terms around they're doing a good job, they're doing a bad job. And nuances can be very difficult for them to process. So they feel really vulnerable during the performance review process. What I have found helpful at Focus is that I give my employees a blank performance review form. They fill out a structured questionnaire about their responsibilities, how well they think they're doing, and how much they enjoy them. I then, as their employer, respond to them. And when there are differences, meaning that they think that they're performing better than I think they are, this is what we then discuss one-on-one in the performance review. And it's really important in providing that feedback that you have concrete examples of what it is your point is all about, and that you be as direct as you can, because people on the spectrum will not read between the lines, and they will appreciate the honesty. And so the person giving the performance review may actually feel some discomfort around being that direct. But we just need to keep in mind that being direct is not the same thing as being disrespectful or rude. We can be respectful, polite, caring, and direct. An area that more and more organizations are considering is to do with the mental health of their employees. And this is a good thing, because in our modern day world, we are all experiencing more in the way of anxiety and depression. And the more we talk about it, the better able we are to then address it. And we all know that anxiety and depression can have adverse effects on productivity. People on the spectrum are more prone to being anxious and depressed than neurotypicals. And that's only because of the pressure that is placed on them to be more neurotypical and to function as a neurotypical person. So organizations have a couple of options. One is to be reactive, and if that's the style, is to be reactive to someone who is dealing with mental illness, the best thing we can do is to be compassionate about it and really understand and help that person through their anxiety or issues that are causing this depression. The other is to be proactive, and that involves having check-ins with your employees and just observing how are they doing, what's their behavior like, do they seem to be doing fine, and then noting any differences that happen over a period of time, because those differences are indicators that something may be going wrong. Another aspect to consider is inclusion, that sense of belonging. Studies have shown that employees who feel that they belong are much happier in their work. People on the autism spectrum are no different. So there are three key components according to a recent study done by Harvard. And the first is idea sharing, where everyone feels that their ideas are being listened to and taken into account. The second is in decision making, so that those decisions that affect a person's work responsibilities are shared and that they have some input into the decisions. And the third is to be a part of the company's emotional support environment. Address each of those three areas and your employees will feel that they belong and that they are included and valued inside your organization. So in conclusion, when you look at these various factors in retaining your employees, especially those on the spectrum, these ideas, once they're implemented, all your employees benefit and they become part of your corporate culture. And able to discuss